afternoon. Thank you for joining us live on Facebook. Today's discussion will be gender-based violence during the lockdown. A serious issue. The president, the ministers all mentioned it in the past that during the lockdown there has been an increase. That is a known fact. And with me, none other than Susan Larkan. She's a gender-based violence activist, as well as she'll mention later on also a victim of gender-based violence for many, many years, and a survivor, past victim and a current survivor of gender-based violence. She's also the administrator of a large Facebook group, quite a few thousand people on there, called the Tabansi Facebook group, and she administers that group. So it's very, very useful. And also, which we're not discussing today, and I'll leave Susan to discuss it a bit further. She's also an expert and a specialist regarding issue concerning schools and school fees. But enough about that. Susan, please tell us more about yourself and welcome.
Hi, Mohammed. Thank you for having me on here again, as usual. I'm always love being here with you. I'm, as you all know, Susan Larkin. I used to be a victim. I will never call myself a victim again. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. It was domestic violence. And actually, yes, even up to today, my harassers still think they have the right or entitlement to carry on after 41 years, which, and I carry on letting them know I'm a survivor and they will not get me back down into the gutter, as they often like to put it. So yes, but today I would like to bring in the differences. People are very, how can I say, closed to what GBV is, which is gender-based violence, which has many categories underneath it. We go on to domestic violence as parts of gender-based violence. We've got IPV, that intimate partner violence, domestic violence, violence against women, violence against men, violence against children, physical violence, all types of violence fall under gender-based violence. There is no discrimination on your sex, your religion, your race, or your gender type, anything. Everything falls under gender-based violence. Yes, they are categorized and they are seen in courts under different categories depending, but yes, it's really much today we use the word gender-based violence more than we actually itemize it as domestic violence or intimate partner violence. That is, as I said, categorized usually when there's a court case and used because there's different law to that. I think you maybe, Mohammed, if you agree with me, I'm not sure. If I can just maybe go and highlight some of them that you know the differences. Gender-based violence is an issue that affects every single person, either personally or by acquaintance, that's your friend or just known. Gender-based violence is an act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in a physical, sexual, psychological harm or suffering to women mainly, although many people think it's only women that are abused. We are actually seeing more men on a daily basis being abused. There's often, I would like to say, there's often reasons for that, and because women are now retaliating more, and unfortunately they're retaliating physically or emotionally. So we've got that change of who's being abused. And sad enough to say, as I've said, is that it's because we are empowered today, but people are reacting they are projecting the abuse back and now become the abuser, which is the wrong way to deal with it. As we said, gender-based violence is somewhat or more inclusive term on a woman and child or girl child, but it's not, it's too much. Women and girls are especially vulnerable to violence as cultural norms and religion norms are still a disadvantage to women. In quite a few of our cultures in South Africa, we find that the women are still expected to keep quiet, be submissive. And when we say submissive, it is not just listening to the head of the house, but being submissive to their wrongful demands. and we would get hit or bashed up or um, locked up in the house because of that, and even killed. I see lately in KZ there's been a case where a man has murdered the girlfriend, the common law wife, and the child, just because he felt the child was not his. Yeah, and then left the bodies in the motel and disappeared. Yeah, he has been arrested now, but that is the type of thing, the fatalities we are seeing happen more and more. We get to intimate partner violence, which specifically describes violence that occurs between people in a sexual or romantic relationship. And that can be same sex or heterosexual, whatever. Is more exclusive than domestic violence, but it also differs from gender-based violence in a little bit. In the IPPV can occur between partners or the same gender, as I've just said, such in gay or lesbian relationships. This is also quite a volatile uh, incidence we are finding, because the couples aren't usually married. In most IPVs, they are just in a girlfriend-boyfriend relationship, or, as we know, same gender-based violence. And these can also be quite volatile. And many of them are also just pushed underneath the carpet when it comes to reporting. And especially in your lesbian, gay relationships, the police, although the ministers are always saying they have to have more empathy to these situations and stop refusing the reporting, you still find that it is not acted out by the officers to actually involve or open cases. Domestic violence, we come back to where this refers to violence which is carried out by partners or family members, and is often in marriages, be it traditional or lawfully, how would I put that, Mohammed, through lawful marriages, if you put that through the system, the government system. Both men and women are perpetrators and are equally victims under domestic violence framework. Here we often see is that, again, one of the partners will go and lay a charge of domestic violence. And as soon as the perpetrator knows that he has now been charged, he will go and open, or she will open, a case equally. And they both have the right to do that, because if he is being abused or she is being abused, they both have the right to lay a charge. But often we find here is that the domestic violence courts are now either they correctly joining them and will work it out as one, or the stronger person it often speaks up more often. And again, we go back, it's often the man that will go in there and be heard more than the woman, and the one case will be thrown out, and only the one will have a case against them. I found a few lately where the women's cases have been declined and the man's has yet been taken up in the court, and yet there is medical proof of that. And I'm going to use the man-woman because this is a man-woman situation where the man has physically abused the woman over a couple of years, which has become more and more traumatic and more severe, but yet the court felt that her case wasn't strong enough and took his case up where she had retaliated and thrown a pot at him. And it's sad because it took quite a bit of convincing to actually join them up or allow her to reopen for a domestic case and a protection order. They actually refused her the protection order at the end of the day, which is also not on. So we do have a lot of complications still in our justice system when it comes to domestic violence, especially in domestic violence. I still see a lot of hiccups and a lot of bumps. We go to violence against women, which is violence against women is more specific than gender-based violence in that it only applies to people who identify or present themselves as a woman. Um, and this violence, again, looks at difference in each situation. All forms of violences are harmful and carry dangerous consequences for all victims. And it's not only physical consequences, Mohammed, it is emotional, financial. And often like to think, and I think of it in my own situation, is that when a person is physically harmed, that bruise, that scar heals to a certain extent, but the emotional um, damage is is lifelong. It lasts forever. It's implanted in your mind, and we are finding more and more people suffering from post-trauma stress syndromes, which has been in my case. I've learned successfully over the years to work through it, but you just need one small incident in your life to trigger that, and you go back 10 steps. So it's a very harmful situation. Financial, again, is also very harmful because often the victims are left homeless without any income because the main provider has now cut off all financial assistance. And again, that's difficult to get further, especially if there's children involved, to actually now go and get financial assistance from him secured through under your domestic violence, mainly to get some maintenance paid. You usually now have to wait for the divorce to go through or go to maintenance court, which can take forever as well. So ultimately, the victim is left penniless and homeless if you don't have extended family to support. So the damages on all violence, on all gender-based violence, is extreme, very extreme. And I just feel sometimes it doesn't matter how slight the violence or abuse is, it has huge consequences somewhere along the line. It also features further out that once the divorce or a relationship is broken up with where there's been a lot of psychological and physical abuse, is that it's very difficult in a new relationship for the victims to grow trust. Trust becomes a huge issue, and you're usually waiting for your new partner, who might not even be abusive in any way, to be concerned about, now becomes a target that you are always waiting for them to attack you, which might never happen. But this causes problems in your relationships as well, is that it is harder to build up trust in a new relationship when you've been in a situation like this. And it causes, so your next relationship now takes on the weight of the abusive relationship. And unless you both can work through it and build on that, you can foresee problems. So I always ask people to go for counseling. There's no stigma. Stigma should be thrown out the door a long time ago for domestic violence, and counseling and healing should take place immediately. Counselors dealing with domestic violence or gender-based violence should all make sure that that's part of the programs to to take the victims through. And like I also said before, sorry, Mama, just another one. Elderly abuse is rife. That also falls under gender-based violence. People also forget that, is that our elderly, and we're looking at our 55 pluses nowadays, that the elderly becomes a lower age, and I feel very pensioned already, is that these become, it's the children are abusing their parents in so many ways, where the pensions are being stolen. They either take the elderly in and they have an outhouse or a granny flat, but they again have no financial um, what's it, gain on their own pensions. Let it be even SOSO or a pension from their own private pension societies. You'll find children abusing it and taking it away from them. And then as soon as the parents become ill and now need extra help, they get locked up in their rooms, or start you'll find the children even beating them, even going back as far as the grandchildren will start beating their grandparents. So that type of mistreating is growing in society today, and I've seen heard quite a bit of that now, especially over the last year with COVID. The mistreating of our elderly is becoming horrific. Human trafficking, funny enough, also falls under gender-based violence in a way, because there's a commercial sex and prostitution forced on girls. So that again is also falling under gender-based violence. There's so many categories of gender-based violence that I felt it was necessary today to actually try and bring it out there, that everyone knows that any type of abuse is wrong and does fall under the umbrella of gender-based violence.
Susan, thank
I
you
don't know if
very
you want
much
to
for
come.
that. No, Susan, thank you for that. I just want to comment quickly on the issue regarding the legal aspect when you mentioned about the Domestic Violence Act, or domestic violence not being gender-based violence based upon the fact that we have the Domestic Violence Act. And of course, the Domestic Violence Act, defines domestic violence as either emotional, psychological, or any type of controlling and negative behavior towards another party. The term gender-based violence is not necessarily a legal term from South African legal point of view, because in my view, many countries got their own definition. It's an international concept. The United States might have their type of definition, but at the end of the day, they all basically stipulate exactly the same thing. But the Domestic Violence Act only applies to domestic relationship between husband and wife, girlfriend and boyfriend, brother and sister, where there's a domestic relationship, their family. The Harassment Act would obviously apply, whereby there's not maybe a co-worker or for a neighbor and so on. But the bottom line of it is, I believe there should be some type of legislation specifically dealing with gender-based violence, specifically with that. It seems to me we're lacking that. We're lacking that piece of legislation. We have the Harassment Act, Domestic Violence Act, but not the not the Gender-Based Violence Act. But maybe if I can just ask you one or two questions regarding this.
Yes.
We've got another 15-20 minutes left. You obviously seen a rise in the amount of gender-based violence that took place during the lockdown. What advice do you have to people who are currently in a gender-based violence situation? What can they do to either to deal with it psychologically, or to fix the problem?
Okay, to fix a problem, if you are in a situation where you are petrified and you just have no way forward, is the best is to get out. There are, as I said, if you don't have extended, we always like to hope that there's family or friends that will assist those that are in an abusive situation. You often come to the words that it's none of my business, and people will walk away and they come up with, they must sort it out. It's not that easy. Is that if you're in that position, if you can get out of your home, go to a family member that you can trust, or a friend that you can trust, or to your police station. Most big police centers have got trauma units where they would refer you to, and the trauma unit again has connections, as does SAPS, to all our safe houses in every province, or every town usually has a safe house. Your church, if you're involved in a church, go to your ministers. They also actually obligated by law to assist you and make sure that you're safe, especially if there's children involved as well. So get out. I have on the previous time spoken about what we call a safe kit. The best is if you can still stay in that home where you are for a few more weeks, get a safe kit together. And I always say that that's your ID, your children's birth certificates, passports, any title deeds or property you might own with your partner, all your financial documents, because those are usually the first thing your abuser gets rid of, and he or she will tear it up, throw it away to make life difficult for you. And in that, and any money you can keep or save up that you might be able to. I always done that with my groceries. So if I went for groceries. If I was given 500 Rand for groceries, I'd make sure 20 Rand of that I saved somewhere and I could put aside, even if it was just for my bus ticket out of town. Um, that's how I got out. So uh, that is a big thing. And if you can keep your safe kit again at a friend's house, not in the property where you are, so get all your documents together and give it to a friend or family member you trust, for you if you have to get out. And as I said, there are many places for you to go to if you're in a situation like that. If your family's not able, your friends aren't able, police station, your church, or any other NGO or social workers. Go to your social workers. They all know of safe houses and can place you in places of safety, for you to start up again. It's not easy. It's not an easy step to do, but it's a safe step and it's for your own sanity. Get up, and if you feel no, you can't, but because you of children, please stop thinking that, because by staying in an abusive situation, you're not doing the children any good, neither yourself. It's actually worse for the children to live in an abusive home than to live with a single parent, because you're actually teaching them abuse, or you're teaching your child that it is fine to abuse your partner. It doesn't matter which way the abuse comes. We've often seen cases of children as young as grade R, um, with abusive behavior. And when they have been spoken to, it's no, my daddy has told me that I must hit that person or stab that person. So it's often learned behavior. Very seldom is it a mental behavior that causes abuse. So yeah, it's get out and then get to an attorney, or to your magistrate's court to get your protection order. That's also very important, to get your protection order, and make sure that you've also got copies of that and on you at all time, so that if your abuser finds you in the streets and you need help, you can whip it out and show it to the police officer, who often asks, but do you have a domestic violence or a protection order? Because some of them won't act without a protection order. Um, so it's best to have a copy in your wallet or whatever if you can.
Susan, thank you for that. Susan, you've been a victim and you completely survived. Um, and you've been a victim for quite many years, about 30 years, 30 plus years. Susan, I never asked you this question before. Sorry, what was that? 35.
40, 41
41
years.
41 years. My apologies for that. My apologies for that. 41
It's
years.
fun.
That's quite a long time. And Susan,
Yeah.
in that 41 years, going forward, it seems to me that gender-based violence, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, all those things have been there for the last few hundred years. I mean, forever. I mean, forever. What
Absolutely,
what
forever.
what what can we do as a nation, as a government, to take it down, maybe by 10% or by 5%? What can be done? I mean, obviously, if the partner and the husband and wife, they're in a relationship and they're arguing, it might be better late at that point. I'm going a few steps back, a few steps before that. What
Mm.
can be done now?
Okay, now, first of all, I'd like to say to our government is that they're not doing enough. It's hot air. When I listen to them on TV, and that I actually want to climb in that TV sometimes and ring whoever's neck is speaking, because it's hot air. It's all fine for us to sit here and talk about it, but when there's no action actually happening out there to assist those in situations, and we start again with our police, we start again with our justice system, and we run down the justice system by many times, but it's not always first justice system. It's the protectors out there, and we go back to SAPS because it starts off there. It will start off with your case um, at SAPS, so it has to go forward in the steps up the ranks. But I would like to see more unity between NGOs, NPOs, and the government. And the government do not interact with us enough. We get gagged. They love gagging us on all media platforms, especially when we talk out, because they know they are not physically doing enough. They're not physically enforcing officers and departments to it, and maybe it's also we undernumbered in counselors, yet there are many out there that are unemployed, but they're just not employing enough counselors in that way. And it should start off at school as well. I think I've mentioned in previous webinars is that bullying is another form that is starting at very young ages, and it's going into it's also gender-based violence, because you'll find the older, stronger person bullying a younger boy to boy or boy to girl, girl to boy, and that is where it's learned. It's starting from there. If we don't nip it in the bud at school education, is you're going to get it carrying on into the adult and into the relationships. So, and yeah, even if, sometimes we can save relationships as well, because it might not be a long-term incident, and counseling, relationship counseling could be more open as well. People only really have access to counsel. When I say couple counseling, is when you go to private psychologists or private counselors. Not everyone can afford those fees. There should be more government available, even if we put it under our mental health, because it becomes a mental health issue as well. We need a lot more interaction on the ground to change the mindset of abuse, to think the mindset, and it starts at childhood again, is to teach your child that violence isn't a way to gain control, because it's usually a control issue. You'll get a hiding if you don't listen to me. So if we can change that way we try to force control on another person, and I say again, it can start in school. We're having life orientation classes at a very low grade. Bring it into life orientation. I know we had a huge debacle in government about the sex education at school. It should actually be on violence, on gender-based violence as well, in our life orientation classes. Because if we start teaching passively at a young age, it stays there. It's a seed planted, and if nurtured correctly, it grows to a very positive outcome.
Thank you for that, Susan.
So that's, yeah, it's very, and the justice system, we have to allow more access to court. You know.
No, Susan, I'm with you regarding that. Same with the lockdown. If I may make an analogy, the government came strong on issue concerning people staying at home, wearing masks, companies having to operate at 50% capacity, and so on. They made it a duty and they made it their job to enforce it. People cannot go to the beach. The beaches are empty. You're not allowed to go to the beach in the Western Cape. They'll arrest you.
Absolutely.
Now, why not take that same approach to various laws, gender-based violence, child maintenance, other laws, why not do that regarding
Absolutely.
that? When it comes to social welfare, maintenance issues, sorry, family issues, put it that way. Okay.
Very much so, they should. I mean, there was a case the other day, the woman had again tried to call the police about 20 times. No answer. Eventually, when she did call them, no, there's no van available, there's no detective available, there's no one available to actually assist. So what do? Again, we wait for a fatality, and only when there's a fatality do they say, oh, but, or we get it in the media. It's too late. There should, almost like we've got a 10111 number, we should have, there are lines available, but there should be a more simpler line available for that type of thing. And now, as you say, lockdown, I mean, after 9 o'clock, I can't run out of my house. I'm going to be arrested. And they're not going to listen to me if I tell them I'm running because I'm being abused. I'm going to have a hard time. There was a case where a gentleman went out to buy baby milk and was arrested because they had run out of baby milk. He was arrested, put into a cell overnight. And to me, that's a joke. Yes, if the person, especially now lockdown, if you have to get out on an emergency, you must be allowed to voice the reason why you are, and if not, be accompanied to where you're going under lockdown.
No, Susan, I'm with
Um,
you. The law
yeah.
needs to be more stringent on domestic violence, and especially when it comes to
Mm,
rights of people, minor kids and so on. Susan, we're running out of
absolutely.
time. One question. Next week we're discussing the topic on school fees, government school, private schools. Are they allowed to
Mm.
withhold your what do you call your part, sorry,
Reports.
your report from the parents and so
Reports.
on. So we know the answers, but we would like you to discuss it with us next week. Um,
I will do.
just give us a brief summary about. I would like people to partake in it and to be able to pose questions next week when you have this
Yes.
webinar. Um, without talking about the topic, I wanted to do that. What can they expect at least from next week's discussion?
Well, from next week's discussion, we're going to, I will speak to them about the reports, what happens when a school's refusing your report, what you can do. You can approach a school you can go to. The same with your school fees. If you cannot pay them in a public school, I will go through the process of application on a reduction or exemption. And the same with private schools, what you can do if they withhold reports, or how we've worked with private schools during the COVID, especially in where they've charged for fees where services aren't rendered. And I will go through that as well to help you them try and deal with those certain circumstances. And also on admissions, where your child has been declined. We've got 3 provinces in the country now that do online admissions, which is causing, it's a very good system, but also they have many glitches and many parents still without place for the school. And parents just feel that because the system says there's no school, they feel there is no school. It's not. So we'll go through that and how they can appeal and get your child into school. It's your child's constitutional right to be at school.
Susan,
So
thank you very much for that. That's very useful, and I'm certain many other viewers that would appreciate that relevant information. I had discussed it with in the previous webinars, and I've learned so much from you. It's information which I would think, if I never pay the school fees, I can't get the report. But you're saying the law says. I
no,
mean, even if I owe them R1 million, I can still get my report cost. So thank you for that. Uh,
absolutely. It's
Susan,
good.
we have to cut it short now. Thank you very much for your time. Just stay on the line for 1 minute. Let me just
Fun.
cancel the stream. We'll chat further, but thank you very much, and to all the viewers, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Thank everybody. Bye.